Well, thank you so much for sticking with us here on 13 WMAZ Plus. If you're just joining us, good morning. And we are continuing to track the winter weather potential across our entire state early this morning. Now, we're going to start kind of with the Skycam and the current conditions here in our area, but I do want to show you what's going on in the northern half of our state and why the impacts up there have been so much stronger and what they're seeing right now. So we'll just kick it off with the Skycams across our area at the moment. You can see a couple of raindrops out there in Perry. Here in downtown Macon, we had a really brief light shower, and across the other Skycams, it just looks like the last couple of days have started off with a lot of cloud cover and some dreary conditions. That is just how the day has kicked off, and honestly, how most of the morning is going to look as well. The temperature in downtown Macon, 33 degrees, so right around freezing. But just take a look at this temperature map across the United States. I mean, temperatures are frigid in most areas as this massive winter storm treks across multiple different states. Now, here in our area, we're actually kind of the outlier for different conditions. Notice this kind of line right here where all these winds are converging. That is actually the cold front that will be pushing into our area later today. This will be the driving force for our light severe weather chances later this afternoon, because take a look at this massive gap in temperatures. We've got the basically only area of green here on the map. Temperatures are still warm enough to support some severe weather fuel across portions of southern Alabama and southern Georgia. And eventually our wedge pattern that has us here in central Georgia will kind of let go, and we will see our temperatures climb high enough to continue to support severe weather chances across central Georgia as well. But I mean, just an impressive looking temperature map here, and I am glad that we are not sitting in the single digits like most places are this morning. Now, the dominating feature here in our area, we've been talking about it a lot over the last couple of days. It is the wedge pattern that we talk about so often. Now, this is a really slight difference, and I've been kind of mentioning this all morning, but now that we got a little more time, I'll explain it a little bit further. Our wedge today, as opposed to kind of setting up just across our northern counties, it's had a little bit more of an easterly axis. So notice we have all of this flow coming in from the northeast. Now, this section right here is coming more into our eastern counties as opposed to curving into just our northern counties. So it's a very slight difference, probably not that noticeable to the average eye, but it is kind of making a difference in the temperatures across our area specifically. Notice our eastern counties actually sitting in the upper 20s and low 30s, where we would normally see that axis of temperature change just set up right along kind of the center of central Georgia here. So some warmer numbers down in the southeast. We've got low 40s over in counties like Cordele and Crisp, and as we head a little bit further toward the north and the east, that's where the temperatures are still near or below freezing. So temperatures in these counties could still support some type of freezing precip as we still see them sitting at these numbers. So that is important to note, because until we see these temperatures climb above freezing, anything that falls in these areas will fall as some sort of frozen precip, likely frozen rain here in our area. So this is what the current temperatures look like at the moment. I will also note, as we head into the satellite and radar here, we did receive a report of a power outage over in Dooley County, just north of the Vienna area. Looks like there's about 202 people impacted by a power outage over in that area. So I'll show you the satellite and radar here in just a second. It doesn't look like they're being impacted by any sort of winter weather. Potentially could have been just a wind situation or something unrelated. But if you are in Dooley County and you have a power outage, it does not look at this time like it's related to winter weather. But we'll talk more about that here in just a second. So this is the current winter weather advisory. Has not changed from the last couple of days, but this is the area, again, where temperatures are still below freezing and where we could still support some light freezing rain through kind of the late morning hours here. Now, the impacts were always expected to be a little more minimal here in central Georgia and always a little bit higher up here in North Georgia. But even at our highest amount, up to 1/4 of an inch, I don't think that we're going to see accumulation up to that anyways. We're talking more about trace to maybe at best 1/10 of an inch here in our region, because most of the moisture this morning has just missed us. We've had temperatures again that have been cold enough, but the rainfall and all the moisture that we need to support any sort of precip has been up in North Georgia, a little bit too far north to see it in our area. So you can see across North Georgia, we do have some frozen rain up there. We also have some kind of mixed precip also. Areas that are further to the east have been reporting sleet and sleet accumulation over in those areas. So they have got all sorts of mixed precip up in North Georgia. And I'll just go ahead and say they have had enough of a mess to already see a lot of widespread damages. They're talking about hazardous road conditions in most places. They're already seeing accumulation up to around 1/4 of an inch in a lot of spots as well. Many reports of downed power lines, lots across the area without power, and many reports of downed tree branches as well. So impacts are already beginning up in North Georgia, and again, they are still supposed to be cold and windy as we head into the rest of today and into the overnight hours tonight. So a prolonged, more long duration situation up in North Georgia, and here in Central Georgia, I mean, we are talking about probably sprinkles at best. Yes, we have seen something. Most of it has been up in Jasper and Putnam counties early this morning, but as we've transitioned over into the mid-morning hours here, we've just started to see these really, really light, small sprinkles pop up in counties that are cold enough to support some type of freezing rain. So if we put this, pause the motion going on here, we can really focus in on what these areas actually are. So really light sprinkles. Remember, I-16 was kind of the dividing line. So we're seeing most of this happen north of I-16, but pretty close. You can see maybe even a teeny tiny little shower there in Dublin because the temperatures in the eastern counties are still really, really cold. But even what you're seeing on the radar right now, you can see they are very, very small. So super isolated, just tiny little blips. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if a lot of this isn't even making it to the surface. We stepped outside when we had one of these little blips over the station here just a minute ago. Meteorologist Alex Pry did. He said he could tell that it was kind of raining a little bit, but it didn't necessarily look like it was making a big impact at the surface. So we do have these really light showers out there right now that are freezing rain. But as we head into the late morning hours, we will start to see us lose these. So the overall won't be a major impact. I would still, if you're cautious on the roads, that's probably still going to be a good idea just in case any of this is creating just really small patchy ice areas out on the roadways. But again, we won't have to deal with it for too much longer as we head into the rest of the day. Like I mentioned, North Georgia, though it doesn't look super impressive here on the satellite and radar, what they've seen early this morning has already been enough for a lot of damages. In fact, what I want to do while we are talking about Northeast Georgia and Northern Georgia is just kind of take you into some of their sky cams because it has been an interesting sight all morning long. Now, what you're going to notice for the most part is that across these sky cams, most of them are frozen over. So we're not really getting a great feed from a lot of these. In fact, a lot of them look like, let me try to pick one where you can kind of tell what's going on. Probably not the best sight, but again, this is kind of what they all look like. They all are showing us just blank slates. You can pick out raindrops on a couple of these, but what's happening is that these cameras themselves are freezing over, or the rain that's falling on them is freezing on contact with the camera. So we're getting these just blanked out views across northern Georgia as freezing rain continues to impact most of the area. I did have one that I felt like did a better job showing it, but it may have actually already turned over into more of a frozen situation. So that's what most of these sky cams have been. It's been kind of a little bit difficult to get a good look at what's going on in North Georgia because of this. Now, further over to the east, like I mentioned, we did have some areas of sleet. So yes, they had some freezing rain, but they also had some sleet. Sleet is able to accumulate a little bit more like snow, and that has been the case over near Lake Lanier and over in Athens. So this is a look at the University of Georgia, downtown Athens, and it's looking almost like it snowed there. They did have a little bit of snow accumulation, but a lot of this is sleet. But check out the roads. You can just tell that this is causing some hazardous conditions out on the roadways. And as these temperatures still sit below freezing, anything that is at contact with the surface right now is probably turning over into more of an ice situation and less of a slushy mixture. So definitely causing some hazardous roadways out in those areas. And like I mentioned, we are talking about hazardous conditions up in most of North Georgia at this time. So I believe we saw a report from actually one of our former meteorologists, Alex Forbes, just a little while ago. I think he said it was close to, Alex, do you remember that number that Alex had said? 10,000 power outages. That's statewide, so that actually could potentially include our Dooley County situation that we have in southern Georgia. But nonetheless, again, this accumulation is definitely causing some impacts up there in North Georgia. So though it might not be a huge deal for us right now, it is definitely still a situation that they are monitoring closely and looking for reports on in northern Georgia. Though it's not necessarily the craziest satellite and radar picture, they still have more moisture feeding into that area because big picture, this whole system is moving to the northeast. So luckily, it's actually finally getting out of our area. You can see the bulk of all this heavy snowfall up in the northeast, but this mixed precip is starting to move out of our area, and we'll continue to see that do that through the rest of the day today. But following quickly behind it is that cold front that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. So we turn to a severe weather potential for the second half of the day today. So I'm going to quickly play the future view for you here and talk a little bit more about, again, as those temperatures climb above freezing, us losing that freezing rain potential. And then I'm going to time it out for you on the future view this afternoon. And then Alex Pry will talk a little bit more about what you can expect in terms of the severe weather potential. And then we have a whole nother situation as we head into Monday morning. So he'll touch on that as well. So let's start again with what we have out there right now. Just these really, really light freezing rain showers. Overall, not a major impact, but we don't really want to see freezing rain in our area nonetheless. So as we head into about 10 to 11 a.m., we'll start to see these areas that are at or below freezing work their way up to above freezing. So we'll say by the late morning hours, you can see these showers start to transition over into just regular plain old showers. So we'll see that again before sometime at noon this afternoon. But as we head into the second half of the day, that's when that line of showers and storms begins to approach us. So what's going to happen here is that, yes, these areas are really cold right now, but you saw the temperature map a few minutes ago. The counties that are down in the south that really haven't had to deal with any of this winter weather potential, they're already beginning to climb. And the counties that are here in the north that are cold are still going to have the chance to see their high temperature climb as we head towards the afternoon. This line doesn't really approach our counties until we get into 2 in the afternoon. So that's a little bit of time for temperatures across the entire area to begin to warm up. Now, the warmest temperatures are definitely going to be down in the south. That's probably where the severe weather potential is going to be the highest, but you'll see the SPC risk here in a minute. They have extended it pretty far into most of central Georgia. So as we approach the afternoon, right around 2, this will be pushing into our northwestern counties, makes its way into the Macon and Warner Robins area sometime around 4 to maybe 5, and then it's in the Dublin, Lawrence County area by 5 to 6. It doesn't push out of our southeastern counties until around 6 to 7, and again, that is kind of the initial line here. So that's when the severe weather potential will still be there. You probably will have some rain and some showers behind the initial line, but once you make your way out of this kind of first push of this line moving into our area, the severe weather potential will drop down to 0. You'll just be dealing with some rainfall through the rest of the evening and towards the late night hours on Sunday. Then, after we lose the rainfall from this entire thing, we will quiet down into the overnight hours on Monday, and rainfall and really any sort of rain chance Monday all the way through Friday will basically be non-existent. We're going to have a very quiet weather pattern ahead of us here, but we're still going to have to pay attention to the weather because we've got some really, really, really cold air moving in behind this line. That's going to make temperatures very frigid this week, both in the afternoons and especially in the early mornings, because we're also going to have some increased winds as well. Now that is what Alex is going to unpack for you. He's here in the Weather Center right now. Alex, let's talk a little bit more about the rest of the day and the week.
Exactly. So how we have been breaking down this weekend as a whole, really since we got into sometime on Friday, was in phases. So we have phase 1, which is going to be the potential winter weather impacts that are still possible for our northernmost counties, mainly Macon farther up to the north. We're still going to have to watch out for possible areas of ice. I think we can really nail down that to just a couple of slick spots that may be out on the roads. We're not really looking at the accumulation of ice that we were highlighted to be possible as in our northernmost counties in that winter weather advisory. Once again, not the worst thing in the world. We have avoided the brunt of the impacts as compared to the northern half of the state, which is dealing with widespread power outages and some messy road conditions. However, while those areas got more of the winter weather impacts, we're dealing with something down here in central Georgia that they are not later on this afternoon, because we are going to watch that line of showers and storms approach, which is going to be phase 2, which Ansley was just talking about there on Future View. And then phase 3 is going to be, believe it or not, as we head into tonight and into tomorrow morning as we kickstart the new work week, potential refreezing over of any wet surfaces that are going to be down at the ground. We'll talk about what we're expecting with all of that in a little bit more detail. But here's a look at your day 1 storm outlook. So we do have a level 1 out of 5 risk for most of central Georgia. The only areas that it doesn't encompass is areas up to the north and the northeast. Now, does that sound familiar? Because we've been talking about our areas to the north and the northeast, holding on to that colder and drier air courtesy of the wedge that is built in overnight. So they're still going to hold on to some cooler temperatures up there in Jasper, Putnam, Hancock, and maybe even northern Washington counties. But as you go down towards the south and the southwest, the air mass becomes warmer and the air mass becomes more humid. And that's especially what you see down there in that yellow shade. So a level 2 out of 5 risk does exist for eastern Alabama getting into southwest Georgia, but that level 2 does also clip areas like Chris County just to the southwest of Cordele, encompassing the Lake Blackshear area. And like I continue to say, really with any time that we get these county by county or just storm outlooks in general, weather doesn't obey these boundaries that we do give them. So areas really close to that level 2 will still need to have their guard up, as they will have the potential for some stronger weather than areas, say, like Macon, up in Milledgeville, up in Irwinton throughout the rest of today. But the potential impacts that we're looking at is mainly in the form of a strong to severe thunderstorm warning that we could see possibly throughout this afternoon. And within those strong to severe thunderstorms, gusty winds are once again going to be possible. Kind of in that 40 to 60 mile per hour range, we could see some occasional gusts up to 60 miles per hour if a storm is to pop up a severe warning. Along with that, localized heavy downpours and, of course, your fair share of some lightning, your fair share of some thunder, and then a brief spin-up tornado risk has been highlighted by the SPC. This is not out of the normal. Even when we just have a level 1, a low-end severe weather risk, this is normally in the cards if we do have the ample conditions for that. But we'll go over what we're seeing in terms of which areas have the best in terms of possible tornadic development. And what you will see is as we go into around noon this afternoon, take a look at eastern Alabama over there, where we do see shades of green, even shades of yellow. So when you pair that up with the scale that you do see in the legend up there on the banner under the label of that banner, you will see that yellow and green colors are going to indicate kind of medium in terms of areas of development. That's going to be a little bit higher than what we are forecasting here in central Georgia, where really our southernmost counties are the only ones seeing anything in the way of possible conditions that could be suitable for maybe some rotation. But that's going to be in those white and gray shades that are farther over to the left of those green and yellow shades. So it really just looks like south central Georgia are the ones that need to have their most guard up in terms of a possible tornado warning that could be issued later on this afternoon. But once again, this is a very low end risk. And if we have anything in the way of a severe thunderstorm and throughout this afternoon, we're already going to be looking at this line of showers and storms as it moves through. If we see anything indicating possible rotation, we will, of course, be letting you know. But that's not something I'd put too much stock into, something like that playing out throughout the rest of today. We just want to highlight all of the possibilities that are going to be with this severe weather risk this afternoon. But also something we are going to be on the lookout for. Future View rainfall shows some isolated pockets of 1, maybe even 1.5 inches of rain down there farther to the south and the southwest. Most areas of central Georgia at least seeing about 1/2 inch of rain. So I would kind of put the range around 1/2 inch of rain all the way up to about 1.5 inches. Maybe some isolated pockets that could get close to 2 inches of rain, but all of that is going to be down at the surface. And this frontal boundary passing through during that afternoon window. So as it does begin its exit and finally the rain is leaving the forecast, sunshine is going to be gone. We're already going to be into the evening and the nighttime hours with the lack of sunshine that will be in the forecast after this rain moves through. That's going to limit how much evaporation can occur as we go into the overnight hours, and with temperatures going to drop down after the passage of this frontal boundary. Anything that's still standing at the surface that doesn't evaporate could lead to the possible accumulation of some freezing over and some slick spots courtesy of those wet surfaces. So here's a look at what happens as we go into Monday morning. A cold weather advisory from 4 to 8 a.m. on Monday. Now, this isn't for all of central Georgia, you will see, not to take away from the fact that everyone is going to be very cold on Monday morning, regardless if you're in this cold weather advisory or you're not included in it. It's just if you are included over to the west and the northwest here in central Georgia, you have the possibility of maybe seeing some wind chill values down into the mid, maybe even the low teens. I'm not forecasting anything near a 0-degree wind chill whatsoever. That's going to be for north and northwestern Georgia, not northwest central Georgia. So I think we have the potential for some feels like numbers down somewhere good deal into the teens if you are highlighted in this cold weather advisory. And it's also over to the west and the northwest because that's the direction that that colder air mass will be moving in from. So here's a look at your wind gusts throughout the rest of today. We might get a brief subsiding in the gusty winds as we go throughout the late morning, early afternoon time frame, But around 3 p.m., we start to see an uptick, especially down to the south and the southwest. Some isolated gusts down in Cordele up to 38 miles per hour. And those pink shades are going to indicate the possibility of maybe even some 40 or 50 mile per hour winds that could be present. We'll get a brief reprieve in those gusty winds as we go into maybe the early nighttime hours, but then overnight into early Monday morning, the breezy conditions build back in after the passage of our frontal boundary. And this is key right here. Take a look at some of those gusts present for Monday morning. 25, 26, maybe even 27 miles per hour. That is going to add on to already some blistering cold temperatures that are moving in. So we know when we have some temperatures that kind of get below that 50-degree mark, you start to get into the 40s, you start to get into the 30s. When you have some windy conditions present, that creates a wind chill factor, and that's going to make for the feels like temperature being much, much colder than what the actual temperature does read. And those winds continue to actually get even more of an uptick as we go into the afternoon on Monday. So Monday's high temperatures are going to feel a whole lot colder than what they're actually forecasted at. And we continue to keep a slight breeze in the cards as we go into Tuesday morning. Yes, this is not as substantial as the breezy conditions we do see Monday morning and Monday afternoon, but still all you need is about a 5 mile per hour breeze in order to influence that feels like temperature in the negative direction. So if you just have sustained winds or an occasional gust up to 5 miles per hour, that is going to make the temperature feel at least a couple degrees colder than what it actually does say. And once again, going into Tuesday afternoon, that breeze is still in the forecast, and it continues to be in the forecast as we go into Tuesday night and overnight into Wednesday morning. So here's a look at what those feels like temperatures are going to do throughout the remainder of today and into the beginning of this next week. Right now you see a drastic gradient. It is 27 degrees up in Athens, Georgia later this afternoon. It is 72 degrees down in Albany, Georgia. Now I know both these areas are outside of central Georgia, but really trying to emphasize the drastic difference in the temperatures courtesy of that wedge setup. That is a difference of about 45 degrees, I think, if my math is correct right there. So the wedge holding strong in northern Georgia. That's why they're not looking at the severe weather risk we are looking at down in south central Georgia and especially down in southern Georgia through the remainder of today, because we will have a fine gradient of temperatures. If you live in Jasper, Putnam, and Hancock counties throughout the rest of today, your temperatures might not get out of the 30s, maybe even creep into the 40-degree mark. But as you go farther and farther down to the south, a difference of maybe about an hour, hour and a half drive from our northernmost counties down to our southernmost counties is going to implicate a temperature difference of nearly 35 to 40 degrees. So 60s and 70s will be present farther down to the south and southwest here in central Georgia, a warmer and a more humid air mass. That's what that frontal boundary has to work with. We talk about these fronts coming through all the time. There's a lot of lift ahead of them. So what are they going to be lifting? They're going to be lifting a whole lot of surface moisture that is present ahead of it. Hence why we're going to get more intense rainfall. The higher and higher that moisture does climb, courtesy of that lift ahead of the frontal boundaries, that's the higher that cloud tops will be. The higher cloud tops you get, that's going to be your more intense weather in nature. So we will hold on to some semi-warm numbers even into the evening and nighttime hours, but then as we go into Monday morning, that's when the bottom drops out. Feels like temperatures possibly into the upper teens, but of course up to the west and the northwest, we could see maybe some mid-teens, even some upper teens possible, not forecasting single digits like you do see up in Atlanta and in Rome, where they are going to see that colder air mass filter in a little bit earlier. Then we go into Monday afternoon. Feels like numbers that are going to struggle to get above freezing temperature. We'll drag it back a little bit because I think this is kind of the peak tomorrow afternoon. Feels like numbers in the upper 20s and low 30s. It is going to be blistering cold. It's one of those days that I will tell you to not only layer up in the morning hours, but you're going to continue to need the layers as you are venturing home, especially with those winds having a bit of an extra bite to them throughout your Monday afternoon. And then it just gets even worse as we go into Tuesday morning. These values not as low as I did see as of the latest model run. Let's see if they do dip down into the single digits. Doesn't look like it, but 10 degrees right there for a feels like number in Macon. You can even see some areas of that pink shade creeping into northern central Georgia. Look at those numbers in Atlanta and Athens. Feels like numbers of 4 and 5 degrees. Another 5 up there in Rome that's kind of behind our banner. So we have the potential for some single digit feels like temperatures on Tuesday morning. We have a cold weather advisory in place for Monday morning right now, but I imagine we are going to see the extension of another one as we go into Tuesday morning, maybe even most days throughout the work week. It is just going to be blistering blistering cold. And even Tuesday afternoon, it's supposed to be a little bit warmer. The breeze will subside just a little bit. It's not going to really feel like it. Feels like temperatures somewhere in the mid-30s throughout Tuesday afternoon, and then they drop back down into the 20s, which is once again better than the low teens, maybe the single digits, but it is still going to be blistering cold as we head into Wednesday morning. And that was only a timestamp for 1 a.m. We still have about 6 more hours of cooling to go until we hit that lowest temperature in the morning on Wednesday. So over the next 3 days, 64 for a high temperature. We've been talking about it a lot over the last couple of days. The single forecast for all of central Georgia, these today graphics, even graphics like this, are a bit misleading because not everyone has the same forecast today. You'll have some showers come through if you live up to the north and the northeast, Putnam, Jasper, Hancock counties, but it is going to be a chilly rain this afternoon, as opposed to farther down to the southwest where we have the potential for some thunderstorms in nature. So 90% chance of rain, might as well go ahead and classify it as 100% chance of rain. I believe that frontal boundary is going to send everyone some form of precipitation. Once again, the 2 to maybe about 7 p.m. window just to be safe, allow for a little bit of wiggle room for maybe some timing variation we could see with this line moving past. Then we go into tomorrow morning. Your weather impact alert continues for the possible refreezing over of some of those wet surfaces that we could see. Remember, we're not going to have evaporation and some sunshine to lead to the drying out of whatever rain does fall, courtesy of the severe weather risk later this afternoon. So that could result in many areas freezing back over as you go into Monday morning, especially those areas that get down below 28 degrees. 28 is the magic number for a hard freeze. 32 is just going to be freezing conditions in general, but typically when you have some bodies of water, 28 is going to result in that hard freeze of some of those frozen surfaces. So you will want to be on the lookout and take it with a bit of extra caution on your Monday morning commute. And then after that, I expect at least a window where we will be above freezing on Monday afternoon. Remember, 43 is going to feel more like the low 30s. However, those actual temperatures paired up with some sunshine should actually contribute to at least the melting of anything that is frozen on the surface on Monday morning. Then going into Tuesday morning, if you do have any wet surfaces still remaining somehow, they are definitely going to freeze over once again with a morning low value of 17 that feels more like the lower teens and maybe even the upper single digits. 44 for a high temperature going into Tuesday as well. So your main takeaways with your weekend weather, that has been a forecast that has been very complicated, very complex. As soon as we finally nailed down the impacts in the way of the winter weather throughout this morning, then we started to see the implications and future view come within view of what was happening this afternoon. So it has just been a whole lot to cover. It has been a lot of disagreement amongst the models. It has been a lot of fine-tuning details. But right now, very thankfully, the window for a wintry mix this morning is continuing to close. Now that we're past 9 a.m., I do anticipate a warming trend back above freezing temperature if those numbers are still just slightly below 32 degrees. And the only impacts that we really have seen so far have been north of central Georgia. Maybe a few slick spots in areas north of Macon, but not dealing with the impacts that they are in the Atlanta viewing area. Atlanta getting up to Gainesville, Athens, northeastern corner of the state of Georgia. We will have a quick warm-up as we go throughout the next couple of hours and into the afternoon, and that's what's resulting in our severe storm risk for much of central Georgia. Remember, many areas down to the south, we were saying yesterday, if you live in Lawrence County, you live in Pulaski County, Bleckley, Dodge County, Telfair, Wheeler counties, all those areas farther down to the south, you were not looking at a winter weather risk. But what you are looking at is that severe weather risk as we go into this afternoon. So just because you avoided those impacts this morning, you can still venture out to church and things like that. Any plans or errands that you have to run this Sunday morning, go ahead and make plans to be back inside by the time you get into this afternoon. It is going to be a messy atmosphere at the very least with plenty of widespread rain. Once again, moving into our west and northwestern counties around 2 p.m. and going all the way until probably around 5 or 6 is when the line and the severe weather risk will begin exiting, but I went to 7 p.m. just to cover any wiggle room with that timing fluctuation that we could see with future view as we head into the afternoon. Then those wet surfaces could potentially refreeze over as we go into Monday morning. Well, I won't say refreeze, maybe just freeze over in general. Many of you have not seen the freezing over of anything at the surface so far, but that's what we're going to be on the lookout for. If we have any icy patches that EMA directors are letting us know about in between now and going into tomorrow morning, we'll of course be providing you with the latest updates on 13 WMAZ Morning as you kickstart a brand new work week. And speaking of that brand new work week, let's look at your 7-day forecast. And there's not a whole lot of good news. You continue to see that whole active stretch of weather that we have for the next 24, maybe even getting into the next 36 hours. And then, of course, as we go throughout the rest of the work week, your weather impact does come to a conclusion, and it is a quiet stretch of weather. We start to see more clouds as we get into next weekend, but morning low temperatures in the low 20s each day, afternoon highs that are in the 40s, and all of those numbers have the potential to feel a good deal colder if we have some breezy conditions built in. Many of you might have seen something about another potential winter storm moving in as we go into next weekend. The chances of that are looking very unlikely as of right now. The long-range models obviously try to get your hopes up about something. People on social media start to post one singular model run that looks like a doomsday scenario, and then the next model run, it's completely gone. So our guidance right now, we're not seeing anything that's implicating the potential for maybe more winter weather impacts going into next weekend, but the temperatures are going to be mighty, mighty cold. So make sure that you're breaking back out the heavy-duty winter jacket, the heavy-duty puffer coat. It is going to be a frigid week here in central Georgia, really wrapping up the month of January on a very cold note, considering the beginning of the new year was off to a very warm start with even our fair share of upper 70s, and even one day that we topped out at around 81 degrees. So it was a very warm spell just about 2 weeks ago. We've completely flipped the script with 2 weekends in a row with winter weather impacts here in central Georgia. We got the snow last Sunday. We might have a few slick road conditions as of this Sunday morning. I think let's end the streak at 2. Obviously, let's just go into a cold week, and then I promise you there is a warm-up that is in store next week. We are seeing some signs of the numbers, at least the high temperatures, returning into the 50s, maybe even getting up to the 60s, back closer to average for the first time in what feels like quite forever. But of course, continue to stay updated with anything in the way of potentially severe storms throughout this afternoon. We'll keep you updated about possible slick spots, maybe some traffic alerts as we go into your Monday morning. And then, of course, we'll cover your weather throughout each and every day of the work week next week. You're probably going to get tired of me saying it's going to be cold each and every day, but just make sure that you continue to be prepared and bundle up.